Hello everybody, good evening if it is indeed evening where you are. Few things I want to talk about tonight. First of all, I want to give a shout out, thank you to Janatza from Seeds of Iblis, who I posted a video on this channel a few days ago, a little over a week ago now actually, just stating my support for what she and her band are doing, and she apparently noticed the video and she gave it a shout out on Seeds of Iblis' Facebook page. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. It's always nice to feel appreciated, of course. Also, anyone who's sort of been following my channel since back in the day, before the sort of long break I took over the last year, will probably be aware that I'm a big fan of Wintersun and that I've been following the progress of their album, their long-awaited album Time, for a long time now. That title's long past being the point of being ironic. But it seems there's finally news on that front once again. I'm not going to make a video dedicated to this because I've already posted about it extensively on my blog. I'll include a link in the description as usual. And I don't want to jinx it by putting yet another video on my channel about the progress of Time and, you know, having to come back here in 6 months with egg on my face and saying, yeah, here we are again, guys, oops. But all the same, it looks like the album is properly underway now. Yari's said on Wintersun's homepage that the mixing is going smoothly. It looks like they've finally got the RAM they need to mix the album properly. They're set to headline Heidenfest this coming autumn, ahead of bands like Korpiklani and Krampus. Which definitely says good things about the progress of the album, that organisers are confident enough to put them on a headlining tour, assuming the album is actually going to be out by late summer. And, you know, the late summer release date obviously suggests that August is as late as it's going to be, which is at most about 5 months. You know, putting a release date that close does suggest that the album is definitely, finally, looking fairly firm in its release date. So it looks like this sort of massive juggernaut of an album is finally going to be unleashed on the world. One can only hope. A promo track would really seal the deal, and I look forward to sort of hearing the sort of the properly produced, properly orchestrated versions of tracks like Way of the Fire, because the bootlegs of that song that emerged last summer were incredible, in spite of the generally terrible sound quality. Sorry to all the people standing in the crowd with cameras, but, you know, I'm sure you're ready to admit it as I do, as we all are. But yeah, definitely starting to get excited on that front anyway. But the main thing I wanted to talk about today is the album by the German prog rock band Cryptex, Good Morning, How Did You Live? I actually discovered these guys a little over a month ago when I saw Pain of Salvation live on the first day of their tour in Glasgow at a small venue called the Captain's Rest. It's actually the smallest venue I've ever seen a professional band play in, just housing a little over 100 people. And going in, I'd never heard of Cryptex before. And, you know, judging by the name, I was sort of expecting maybe the people booking the tour had fucked up a little and, you know, put in a sort of generic death metal band or something, you know, to support Pain of Salvation. Which isn't the case at all, because Cryptex took me and pretty much the rest of the crowd by surprise. I talked to quite a few people at the gig. None of them had heard the name Cryptex before, and the band did mention on stage that this was the first time they'd ever been on tour. So there is that, but their music is actually fairly widely available. They released it through their own self-owned label, but you can get it on Amazon.com and Amazon.co.uk, so it's fairly easily accessible if you do want to check it out. How to describe the sound? Well, the album's about an hour long, but it's divided into a lot of very short tracks. In some ways it recalls bands from the 70s like Focus or Emerson, Lake and Palmer, in that it demonstrates a very wide and eclectic range of genres and influences in its composition. In some respects, they're actually a very appropriate complement to Pain of Salvation. I believe the tour is just about over now, but if this hasn't sort of got the word out about them, I don't know what will. But there's an extraordinary sort of range of instruments on display, and this was replicated in the live show that I saw. In addition to sort of the main keyboard, guitar, bass, there's also pulling out stuff like blues harps, harmonicas, didgeridoos, tiny little xylophones. It was actually kind of a humorous moment in the crowd to see the guitarist just sort of hang up his guitar for one track and just sort of bring out a tiny little xylophone and just hold it up to the microphone. It was, you know, it was quite a cute moment. And the music does sort of revel in its own strangeness a lot. And not every song is a winner on this album, it has to be admitted. There are some points where, because the songs are quite short, most of them are around sort of 2.5 to 3.5 minutes, sort of to keep up the number of songs, and a lot of them do come up with sort of very good ideas, but don't fully develop them. A couple of the others, you know, just sort of fall a bit flat. You know, there's one song called Leviathan, which is a tribute to Rage Against the Machine of all things. Not actually a cover of Rage Against the Machine, I should rephrase that, but it definitely sort of emulates that sound a lot, and it just sounds a little bit flat and dull. And there's also a song called It's Mine, which is just sort of a upbeat, balladish track, I guess you could call it, but it doesn't really elicit a great deal of emotion. But the majority of the songs are considerable winners that demonstrate a considerable bit of verve and energy. They put on an extremely charismatic live show. They're not quite a metal band, I guess you would say. They're more sort of prog rock, just sort of verging on the very sort of edges of metal. Again, very much sort of a 70s influence going on there. And it does recall the sort of really live show, virtuoso-oriented stuff of, like I'm sure you're all aware of the famous live performance of Hocus Pocus by Focus, where they just pull out all sorts of crazy tricks and stuff like whistling on stage and, you know, just bringing out flutes out of nowhere, just to sort of, just for sheer sort of whiplash they induce. And Cryptex are like that a lot of the time. The music does absolutely have this pomposity and just this sort of joy in surprising the audience at every possible turn. I think probably my favourite moment on the album is from the song Dance of the Strange Folk, where just about 2/3 of the way into the song, all the instruments just sort of fall out immediately, except for a sort of rhythmic vocalization that almost sort of seems to draw on gospel music. And it's extremely catchy and extremely startling, and I can find myself humming it just when I'm walking down the street. It's really, really effective. But the album does have its sort of more downbeat moments, more sort of subtle and restrained moments. One of my favourite songs, I think probably my favourite song all in all, is the sort of ballad-ish Alois, which, if anything, actually seems to sort of recall the Verve and their album Urban Hymns, sort of Bittersweet Symphony in particular. And I know that's about as unmetal as it's possible to get, but I am actually quite a big fan of the Verve, and I really do enjoy Urban Hymns' album a lot. And Alois does sort of capture that very sort of brooding, slow-burning, vaguely orchestral, but sort of never quite over the top or bombastic feel to it. And I really just sort of love that sort of haunted sound. It's great. And of course it would be remiss of me not to mention the 11-minute closer, what's it called? Color Called Gently, that's actually the one. 11 minutes, which basically just sort of compounds all the good ideas the album's already come up with alternating energetic and fast sections, with lots of good sort of hard rock riffs, with more sort of downbeat and more sort of subtle, elegant moments. And it really does deserve to be listened to just for all the sort of combination of folk and gospel and sort of classic rock influences. It's a really sort of proper tour de force album that's very much in sort of defiance of the epic long suites that tend to dominate prog rock music these days, the general roster of Inside Out Records and what have you. So I'd absolutely advise you to check out Cryptex if you're into prog rock and you don't mind something a little bit eclectic. So again, available on Amazon.co.uk, and yeah, seeing these guys live was a pretty considerable experience. I bought the album pretty much there and then at the venue, and I wish the guys the greatest success. They deserve a lot more exposure than they've got. I believe you can only find a few live videos on YouTube. I think there's maybe one studio recording up on YouTube. I'll probably include a link to that in the description once this video goes out, but you should definitely look them up. Anyway, that's all I've got for now. Okay, till next time, I'm Thresh to Death. Goodbye.